This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by promoter Ben Shalom here in London. Ben, firstly, how are you?
Very well. Was travelling last night, so good to be here. So hot inside Sports Direct, but looks.
You must be roasting. I've just noticed everything you're wearing as well.
You know what? We now have a. Yeah, there is. Sorry. We now have a partnership with Castor, so yeah, I didn't realise how hot. It's hotter here than it is in New York. Unbelievable.
I could probably vouch for that myself, but yeah. Azim pulling out through injury. Ben, obviously disappointing news about one of your stars. Just walk me through what the injury was and why it was so serious that he had to pull out.
It sums up our 6 months, really. I think sometimes I got to Friday night, honestly, and I was thinking we've had Josh Taylor go, Liam Smith, that's 2 pay-per-view events, Lawal, Thompson, big fights for our cards. There's more in there.
Heffron, Chelli, is there no truth in that?
Yeah, and we found that out last night. But so I get to Friday, I'm thinking surely nothing more. Let's look forward to Azim and Savannah Marshall, and then got the call on Friday evening, really, from Jake and Shane. Couldn't believe it. He's got an infection in his hand, and he cut his hand. I think he cut his knuckles, and he was sparring this week. Well. And the infection's just blown up, and it has blown up. And if you see his hand, it's unusual. Luckily, it's nothing more than an infection, but it just means it's impossible for him to fight. Gutted for him, absolutely gutted. I feel like he felt that this was a big test for him. This was a time for him to show what he was about, and he put in a huge camp and was ready to go after the Ramadan period as well. But I think when you look at the card, it's a York Hall card, but it's a massive card for York Hall and Frazer Clarke. It feels like it's his natural home. He's had so many wars in there already, and in his amateur days and WSB and everything, and so it feels good for him in his big step up. And Caroline Dubois in a huge fight for her, and Aaron McKinnon has had to take another late replacement in Lima, but a great fight. Vidal Riley with his rematch in Riley-Taj, and Isaac Chamberlain, and again someone else that we had to give an opportunity to once his fight fell through with Mikaela, and he'll fight Dylan Brajon, who's obviously been the rounds with Chris Bill and Smith, fought Sislak last out for the European title. So that's a fight I'm looking forward to, and looking forward to seeing Isaac back in the ring in a competitive fashion as well.
Frazer Clarke now headlining, as you mentioned there, Mariusz, his opponent. Do you think it's one of those where, because of obviously all the Wardley talk and the fallout from that, he hasn't necessarily got the credit for stepping up for this fight?
I think so. All you have to look at, even in the past few years, at the types of fights he's been taking and the types of fighters that have been taking Mariusz, whether it's Dillian Whyte. I think Hughie Fury took him in the COVID period in maybe his 28th or 27th fight. And it shows in your 7th fight to be stepping up to someone who's got that experience, knows his way around the ring extremely well, former world title challenger. It's a great step up for Frazer in his 7th fight. I think, yes, with everything that's going on, people don't realise exactly what sort of fight he's going into here at such an early stage in his career, but massive test for him. And I think for me, it's about seeing how his stamina is, seeing how he can cope. And Mariusz not been stopped in the first half of a fight in his whole career, and it's been a long career. So, perfect opponent for me, and let's see how Frazer does.
I was going to lead on to my next question. Do you think it's possible we see Frazer be that man to stop Mariusz? He's got 8 rounds to do so.
I think so. I think what I saw against Bogdan Dinu in terms of physically was a completely different Frazer Clarke to who I saw against Sokolowski. And that's why, although it went 2 rounds in the week, something had clicked, something had changed, and he felt like he was hungry and ready. And I think Frazer needs challenges to get up for. This is definitely a challenge, and yeah, he'll be looking to stop him, I'm sure. But the key thing is we've got a guy that knows his way around. We've got a guy that's not going to go early, and we've got a guy that's been in there with some huge names, even in the past 3 years. I think Martin Bacoli as well. So big step up for Frazer. Just what he needs, and he gets the headline at York Hall. I think it's a natural fit.
Just to touch on, because we haven't spoken since our last interview with that Wardley fallout, you said that talks were still ongoing there. For the future, have those continued for those two to cross paths within the next couple of fights, or whenever you may see them aligning?
Look, we do want that fight. It wasn't the next one for us, and we've made a huge offer to Fabio Wardley, but that's for them to decide. It's in Fabio's hands. we've made what we believe is much more money than maybe a purse bid could generate. I mean, that's up for debate, and they might argue otherwise. But we put in a huge offer, much more than even we put in on the week. So the court's in the ball's in Wardley's hands, and yeah, it's one for him.
Caroline Dubois returning. What are you hoping to see from her? Every time she steps between ropes, she always seems to be a class above her opponent.
Yeah, I think Caroline Dubois is the future, I think, for this country. I think women's boxing needs a new star. It needs a star coming through. It needs someone to carry the mantelpiece that Tasha Jonas and the Katie Taylors, and even the Americans that are Mikaela Mayers and the Alicia Baumgartners, much further on in their career. We've got a girl who's 22 years old, done things in the youths that no one had ever done. And now she's getting to the point where she's restless, and that is amazing, especially at this age. And she demanded this fight. She wants the big fights. She wants the big names. We just saw Lezcano come in, and she's big. And I think all Caroline was saying is that's exactly what she wants, and she can't wait to get in there. And yeah, the big names await. I think if you saw this opponent for Mayer or even Taylor, at certain points later on in the career, you wouldn't have batted an eyelid. She's number 3 in the world on BoxRec. She's a serious operator, and shows big intentions for Caroline. I think it is the breaking out fight. It's the coming of age fight.
Shane's already said that he feels like she could fight a Mikaela May next if a fight was offered and she'd beat her. How far off do you feel, whether it be a Mikaela or somebody of world level stature, do you feel Caroline is from facing that opponent?
Talent wise, she's already there. We want the public to see it. We want them to see it on Saturday night. But talent-wise, she's there. It's now just the right opportunities and making the right fights for her. But there's not that once you fought Lezcano and then you look around, there's not far to go to the very, very top. And she wants to be a multi-weight world champion. And she has the ability and the temperament and the ambition to do that. And we should see a hell of a fight on Saturday night, because we've got someone that doesn't like losing, that's going to come and try and use her size against Caroline, and we're going to have to see hopefully a superstar come to fruition and show how good she is.
Vidal Riley and Riley-Taj too. Heading into this one, do you expect it just to pick up the way that the first fight was ending, or do you expect both to make changes? Do you expect it to be any different?
You know what? It wasn't a fight that we necessarily wanted to make. Our matchmaker was absolutely on us, and you'll know that, to try and make that fight again. But it was Riley-Taj, really. He wouldn't leave Vidal alone. Every day it was just relentless. And in the end, we thought, you know what? He's an entertaining guy. He's an entertaining fighter. He did get cut. He did give everything. And Vidal was willing to put that to bed, especially I think it annoyed him in the end. But we now have a really entertaining fight, and I'm glad that it's on the card because it picked up, and the way those two go back and forth is very good. I think it's good for Vidal to be in fights that people are excited about and want to see, and I think this has it, and yeah, looking forward to that.
You have a certain Roman Fury on the card as well, his first fight under the boxer banner.
Yeah, been speaking to John about Roman for a while, and obviously Manchester lad, and done it in a different way, and he'll admit has no amateur experience, but he can fight, and we'll see. And Jimmy Harrington's been on at me as well, so look, we wanted to give him his opportunity, and we'll see how he does on Saturday night. But I saw his debut. He can fight. It's raw. He's learning on the job, but he's from a very famous fighting family, and let's see how far he can go.
Isaac Chamberlain obviously back out this weekend, but provided it goes to plan, where do things sit with a Mikaela fight?
I think that fight still happens next. I think it was, I don't know, I'm not going to get into what happened and this and that, but it has to happen next, or Mikaela will be asked to vacate. We want to see that fight. We've had Mikaela since he won a tournament in 2018 or 2019, long time ago. And he's won the British title and he's done really well. But this was a really big fight for him, and a huge fight for Isaac Chamberlain, who must be the most unlucky cruiserweight that I know. Takes fights whenever you offer them. Took Lawrence Okoli possibly at the wrong time. Took Chris Billiam-Smith at the wrong time after a layoff. Then gets his opportunity at the British. That's pulled out. Devastated for him. And and that's been the history of the past 6 months. Is when fighters get injured, you're left with a decision. And we take a lot of flack for fighters getting injured, but ultimately we have to keep the shows on. We have duties to our fighters, and whether that's when Taylor pulls, we do the undercard in Nicoli in Manchester, whether that's Smith-Eubank with Savannah, but then you have fighters like Isaac Chamberlain for no fault of their own who've gone through a camp and don't get that opportunity. Luckily, we've managed to get Dylan Brajon in for Saturday night, which is a very good opponent at late notice and gives him an opportunity that he's not really had before, which is getting in rounds and getting in a decent opponent before his big fights. And that cruiserweight division, even domestically, is great. I saw Chev Clarke, really impressive against David Jameson, who's a tough guy, and I think he'll be looking at the winner of Isaac Chamberlain, Mikaela Lawal, which I expect to happen in September. But yeah, pleased for Isaac that he's got his career back on track.
Just moving away from this card, just wanted to touch on a few other things. I know you was looking to put Ben Whittaker, there was talks or reports rather, of Ben Whittaker potentially being on what would have been Smith-Eubank Jr. too. Where do things sit with him? When do you want to get him back out next?
He is fighting on the Marshall Cruz card. That his opponent being announced, I think, Monday, Tuesday. So he's on that card. Yeah, and obviously and looking to be as active as possible.
Sticking with that, obviously Mark Heffron pulling it out through injury. He obviously confirmed it earlier on in this interview. So can you tell me what exactly has happened with him? Yeah,
he was just couldn't believe it. Yesterday got an email from Andy Ayling and I was like, no. And it was, and I think I spoke to Kevin Murray and they thought they'd be okay. They sparred well this week. I think he's been out running. He's had an issue with his foot and something's gone in his hamstring and it's just impossible. And look, we take that at face value. We work with them well, and that fight will get made for a later date. Zach Chelli will fight on that card. We think we've got a very decent option for Zach Chelli because it was a fight everyone was looking forward to. So got it again, and it's just you got to roll with the punches. And I think the past 6 months for us has been really tough, if I'm honest, really tough. So many pullouts, so many injuries. I mean, and. No fault of the fighters, but the key is, and what I'm proud of the team, because they're the ones that put in the work, but the venues do the promotions, do the promos, do everything. We've kept the fights on. We've delivered for our fighters throughout that period. It's been tough, and yeah, I'm hoping the next 6 months we don't see as many injuries.
With one of those, that was Paul Smith-Eubank Jr. too. Where do things currently stand with that?
I'm seeing Calla on Thursday. Liam as we've been battling with absolutely being able to give certainty on the date that he's back. We had another scan. It's about 7 to 10 days ago now that's being assessed, and we think it will be okay for August. We think Liam will be okay for August. We'll sit down with Calla on Thursday and plan a date, and I'm looking forward to getting that back on because again, through no fault of his own as well, Chris Eubank Jr. is ready for the fight. Liam Smith has been gutted because obviously it's a fight that he wants as well. But as I say, speak to Calla on Thursday and hopefully get a date in the diary.
Obviously, a week or so or 2 weeks ago, Eddie Hearn was pretty confident that he was able to get Eubank Jr-Benn over the line. Contractually, where do things sit whereby if it isn't made, this is Smith-Eubank Jr. too, by a certain date, is Junior then able to go and negotiate a Ben fight, or does he have to wait and see what happens with Liam? Yeah,
I think, look, we're not going to hold the fight hostage forever. It gets to a point, if Liam isn't fit, then Chris has to fight. He's a fighter. I don't think because of the UCAD situation, but again, that's a UCAD thing. I don't think that fight in particular, but ultimately I do believe the rematch will be next. On the Conor Benn fight, I can't comment. I think we were all just waiting on the result from UCAD, and then I suppose that will set out what's next for him.
Just final thing, Ben, before we wrap this up, this past weekend we saw Josh Taylor defeated by TVM Lopez. I want to get your thoughts on that, as obviously you've previously worked with Josh for the Catterall fight and was in line to work with him for a rematch before that all fell through.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a great build-up and fair play to Josh for going out there. Obviously, I was gutted when the Catterall fight didn't happen, but he took on a tough test in Teofimo Lopez in New York, and I think deserves credit. It's hard when you've been not fought in that long. Activity is so important at the top level, and we're seeing it less and less now because the money's so big, the negotiations take so long that fighters will just wait and wait and wait. And I'm not saying that was the case for Josh Taylor, but activity is key at that top level, and you have to take that. But at the same time, Lopez on his day is an incredible fighter. and he showed that again on Saturday night. And both fighters will be back, I'm sure.
Ben, it's a pleasure as always. I'm leaving you now to go and catch up with the rest of your fighters and watch the rest of his workouts. So thank you for speaking to me.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.